Good morning, everyone. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Donovan, Principal DevOps Manager at Microsoft, and I'm here with Jill from the Windows team, and we're going to learn how Windows uses VSTS for work item tracking. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So tell me what you do here at Microsoft.
So I'm a group program manager in the engineering systems.
Okay.
And what I do in WDG, so Windows and Devices Group, and I work on all of the work management.
Wow.
So how we handle our work items, how we handle our planning process, how we handle our dependencies amongst teams, both in Windows and across Microsoft.
Okay.
And we kind of manage the VSTS account for WDG.
Okay, so let's talk about your Scrum shop, Agile shop, what's your sprint length? Let's just start there first.
We're all of the above.
Okay, great.
We are, Windows, WDG is made up of many beasts.
Okay.
You know this.
Yes,
like
it's very big.
we are HoloLens, we are Surface. We actually still have Xbox, even though they orged fancy.
Okay.
We still have them in our account. We still
Perfect.
manage their work items. We have Core, which are like the guts of Windows,
Okay.
the silicon and the kernel, and we have all those teams. And so we're not any one pure type of shop.
Okay.
So the silicon team and the Surface team, they plan long.
Gotcha.
They have Agile practices, but
Okay.
they plan for long periods
There
of
would
time.
still be more traditional waterfall type of development.
There are elements of silicon that you
Okay.
just have to do
Fair
in a
enough,
really
and
measured
it's just
way.
interesting because I tell people
Yeah.
that I was like, don't think waterfall doesn't work.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
it can work if your target is, if your target is stationary, you can work backwards and be
Yeah.
very successful. It's when your target moves that
Yeah.
Agile starts to shine. So it's interesting to hear that not only are we still waterfall in some areas, but it sounds like we're doing it quite well.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because we ship at every single cadence. We have
Okay,
teams
sure.
that ship daily, we have teams that ship weekly, we have teams that ship monthly. So we have every different cadence.
Okay.
And so one of the things that makes us unique is we have to have work processes that support every type of way you can want to work.
Interesting.
And so you've got the silicon team, which is like, I need a promise from you that you're going to do this work for me in 18 months. And you have the store team, which is like, I don't
Every
remember
day.
what I did yesterday. And so I got to get out today.
Right.
And so I always look at my job, in some senses, is about brokering a system that manages everybody's preferences with some common rules of the road.
Wow.
Like, we have to have the same speed limit terms, we have to have a currency that we all
Sure.
use, we have to all agree to drive on the left or the right.
Right.
But then beyond that, I have to give you the level of flexibility of what kind of car you want to have.
Interesting, because it's funny, because when I've interviewed Aaron Bjork, who does the work item tracking
Yeah.
for VSTS, he calls it aligned autonomy.
Yes.
Which is a really interesting term.
Yeah.
We're aligned, but you're free to do what you need to do to be successful. But yours is even to a further extreme,
Yeah.
right? It's one thing to have 50 Agile teams all sprinting at the same sprint cadence, but you have waterfall teams.
Yeah.
And are they taking dependencies on Agile teams and vice versa?
They are.
Are they even using the same template? Are you using CMMI for the silicon?
We use custom templates that
Of course.
we've kind of.
But what was their base template? You're using VSTS.
We're using the base template from VSTS.
Right.
We just loaded it down with a whole bunch of extras.
Gotcha. So the teams that are running like the waterfall method and those who are running pure Agile, did they start from the same base, or did you have one start from CMMI and one start from Agile and one start from
No,
Scrum?
I don't mean to sound like I'm not answering it.
Sure.
The truth is, we started from everybody got the Agile template.
That's what I was asking. Okay.
And then what happened is, because if you know our origin story with how we got onto VSTS, which Aaron,
No, I don't.
maybe
Please share it.
Aaron has talked about,
Okay.
the 1ES movement came.
Yep, I remember.
And we were
Yep.
like, all in. We love 1ES. We love working together. And so we took, and at that same time, they were doing the big reorgs, the
Yep.
big One Microsoft reorgs. So what happened at the time was they took all the teams from their own local processes and their own local TFS and
Sure.
local servers and local solutions,
Sure.
and they threw them into one VSTS account with the Agile template and said, go.
Wow.
And chaos ensued.
Of course.
Utter chaos
Of
ensued.
course.
And then the way that got brokered for about the first year was, and you need a field, and he needs a field, and she needs a field, because the Agile template just doesn't work for everybody. It
Sure.
just doesn't. And so we ended up with this cacophony of more and more and more and more and
Yeah.
more. And I always think that one of the things that certainly the VSTS finds interesting about the Windows story is, what do you do when you fallen off the precipice.
Yes, yeah.
And you've kind of taken a product that was beautiful when you started, and you kind of like took it down the tank. And what do you do to rescue it?
Yes,
and I'll
for
tell you, my
sure.
favorite is when I first took over this job and we were in this kind of like pit of despair, Aaron Bjork came in and demoed VSTS. Forgive me for calling it Pure.
That's fine.
Pure VSTS. And he's demoing it to, me and fancy people like the leaders. And literally my boss turns to me and says, "What product is he demoing?"
Wow.
Because it doesn't look like what we
Wow.
use. And he meant it as a joke, since
Sure,
obviously knew what Aaron was.
yes.
But we were both sitting like, this is not our life. And,
Right.
this actually looks like a pretty awesome tool. Like, what did we do to your beautiful tool?
I was a process consultant before I joined Microsoft,
Yeah.
so I flew all over the world installing and implementing TFS back when it was the on-prem TFS.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, countless customers did the exact same thing. Because they could customize it, they did customize
Yes.
it, even when they had no business doing so.
Yeah.
And I remember one customer, sounds like what you had gone through, I show up and they have on the screen just this graph. And I'm like, what am I looking at? It's like, it's our bug workflow, right? And it's just like 85 different states. I'm like, I don't understand why you have so many states. Like, the bug was fine. Like, oh no, we need each state to represent this. And what they failed to realize is that, said, have you ever looked at that reason field? Like, yeah, we don't know what that's for. I'm like, that's why you have 80 states, right? They're supposed to work together. And then I said, tell me what this state means. I'm like, yeah, that's this state and this reason. Like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, why
Yeah.
didn't you learn how to use the tool before
Yeah.
you went and did this? And we literally had to go back to the base template when they realized
Yeah.
that we just didn't take the time to learn it. So I tell everyone, read the documentation
Yeah.
for the template that you have chosen before you go and modify it. And every time I do a show, like I'm a guest host on Visual Studio Toolbox, and I had one of the people from the work item tracking come in and talk about the new customizations we're
Yeah.
allowing. And in my stomach, I'm like, the more you allow them, the more they're going to abuse it.
Yeah.
Why are we letting them do this,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear that we made the exact same mistake.
Yeah.
So we took the Agile template and we added to it everything everyone thought they would ever need.
Yeah.
And then
And then some.
Yeah, and then how do you get yourself out of that?
That was the last 2 years
Wow.
of my life. That sounds soul crushing. I'm sorry, I'll retract that a bit. That was, it partly because there is customization we need for
Understood.
who we are.
Understood.
But what we had done was the Oprah style, like, you get a field, you get a field, you get a field, who else wants a field? And so we had, the state machine is such a good one you bring up.
Yes.
We had no less than 4 state machines.
Oh my goodness.
And what's fabulous, and what I can talk about how we solved it. But one of the funny stories I love from this is we pulled up the data on like let's just look at the usage of some of these fields.
Sure.
And we had 2 in particular we were gunning for, and so we pulled them up and said, just here is how people use these state machines.
Right.
And so you'd see these items that are completed and not committed.
Gotcha.
Or
yeah.
completed and cut.
Yeah.
Like, you can't.
That doesn't make any sense.
Did you do it out of spite? Like, I cut this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, what is the completed cut state?
Exactly.
And so we went through this process of, first, one of our big problems was we had run everything very centrally and had done it in this, inclusive to inclusive, without a plan way, but very centralized. So that created actually 2 opposing ills at the exact same time. 1, system bloat, system's a mess.
Sure.
2, acrimony. People
Wow.
feel like they have no say over the system. They
Yeah.
don't understand the decision making. They think it's probably dumb because they're not doing it. And like
Right.
it becomes this. So at the same time as people are getting everything they want from the system, at that exact same time, they're mad at it because they're not included in the delivery of it. So kind of step 1 for us was to change the cultural norms on that. And I always think of it as taxation without representation. Like, we had to change it to representation.
Okay.
My boss coined the term the Jedi Council.
Oh, nice.
It turns out if you call something cool, people show up to a meeting. And so learned a little life lesson there. So we took an engineering leader from every part of WDG
Okay.
and brought them together and said, these are the big problems we have to fix with work management.
Okay.
We need some common currency. We need one state machine.
Sure.
We need less fields.
Yep.
And so that allowed each each engineering group, basically, to have a voice in the process, get their requirements in. So like, for example, the silicon team was our representative. It's like, I have unique needs that I want represented, and I have ways that I need other people to work for my workflow to work.
Sure.
And so that really helped us was getting that. And the other thing that we insisted in that process is you can't have a pocket veto.
Okay.
So if you designate a Jedi, that's a fancy thing, your Jedi shows up, they speak for your org. And so if you, as their fancy person, don't like the decision they made, you shouldn't have empowered them.
You sent the wrong person.
Yeah, and so that helped us with two big problems. Like one was actually getting consensus to get work done.
Okay.
And two was inclusion. People feeling like, I know how to have a voice in the process. And it created other ills, as you can imagine that model would, but it at least helped us get the big rocks moved.
Okay.
Second was we had to have a really targeted approach on what are the things that have to be federal, what are the things we have to mandate that everybody does the same, and what's the stuff that's state and local. Like the stuff where, you know what, if you want to use the system, if you want to use the boards, use the boards. If you don't want to use the boards, don't use the boards. If you want to use this WIT, use this WIT. You don't want to use this WIT, don't use this WIT. And we had to get a really small, tight, and curated list of common currency.
Gotcha.
And so that's the state machine. That's, WDG cares a lot about dependencies.
Okay.
What's the work you're going to do for me so that I can ship my product?
Right.
Like, if I'm doing silicon bring up for HoloLens,
Sure.
you need to be able to depend on that work, and you want to be able to track it out of the millions of work items. Like,
Sure.
I want to track those items. But to do that, we have to all agree what a dependency is, how we're going to anoint it, how we're going to know what it is, and how it travels through the system. So we had to pick a curated list of things that were going to be federal, and then leave everything else to folks to figure out.
So how many team projects are we talking about, though? That all can't be one team project for all these people, right?
Believe it or not, we are 3.
Wow.
So Store has a project, Xbox has a project, and then everybody else is in what we call OS.
Wow. Because I was thinking, I'm listening to you fight over this work, and I'm like, but why doesn't everyone just have their own?
Yeah.
Right? And that's why, because you only have 3 team projects for all of, and how many people are we talking about?
So our account serves 33,000 people in Microsoft. So that's a cheat, right? Because that's Microsoft. Because I forget that Windows is the substrate of so many different projects, and so folks from Office have to work in our account, and folks from Skype have to work in our account, folks from Azure have to work in our account, and sometimes we have to work in theirs, but like we're kind of a central hub. So 33,000 people across Microsoft. Terry has 22,000 FTE, and about 11,000 of them on a monthly basis when we do our MAU, it's about 11,000 people using the system at a time.
One account, 3 projects for 33,000 people. Right. So this helps me when anyone says, does it really scale?
Oh my gosh.
I always giggle and I feel bad when I laugh at them. I'm like, come on, man. There's nothing you're going to throw at us that we haven't seen already. Like Windows is our largest customer. Now, I was talking to Tony in another show, and he was mentioning that Office is also going to be just ginormous, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
They're even going to have a bigger repo than Windows is going to have, which blows my mind that there's more code in a app than the OS that runs the app. But I'm excited to see when they come over too. But back to Windows. So we talked a little bit about the fact that you had to make huge people changes. Right?
Yes.
Your people really had to get on board, come to some consensus, because just like Aaron likes to say, you kind of have an aligned autonomy too, right? It's like you don't have to use every feature of VSTS, but you are going to use this state machine when you're creating an issue or dependency.
Yep.
And if you want to use the Kanban board, great. If you don't want to use the Kanban board, but when you define a dependency, it's going to be defined this way because we all speak the same language going across. How much resistance did you have even after you had this Jedi Council of people who said, I now have a voice? I can't imagine it still went terribly smoothly after that. Right?
Does anything?
Yeah, exactly, right? So, I mean, they're raising their hands, they're getting their words in there, but what are some lessons that we learned? And if you had to do it again, what are some things you might do differently?
I think one of the things I learned in this process, and it's kind of something you already led with, so I was late to the party in learning this, is we were better off preventing bad behavior than allowing it and trying to remove it.
Yeah.
So we had these two things going simultaneously where we were trying to fix the problem we had, which caused in some ways endless acrimony. It's like, you're making me change
What you
how
all
I
hate.
pay taxes. Like, I don't want to pay your taxes. I don't want to change how I pay my taxes. I hate everything about this. And at the simultaneously, we're actually trying to create extensions that provide extra value for the workflows that WDG has that are unique. And in those places, we could build the policy in from the ground up, and those go seamless.
Sure.
People are like, I'm not trying to be malicious as an actor
Right.
in your system.
Right,
I just don't know what your rules are.
Right.
And so when I invent my own and you tell me they're wrong, you create endless chaos for me for no reason, you know? And so building the policy in from the ground up was, to me, one of the big lessons I took away from it is, if you have things you don't want to have in the system, don't let them get in the system.
Sure.
And so when I think of, you're like, careful when you tread down the customization
Yeah,
road
it's
on the
dangerous.
norm. Because once you say, well, I mean, you can have a field. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, I get you. You're smart.
Exactly,
You need
yeah,
fields.
You're special.
Like, once you do that, people are like, wait, I don't know if you noticed.
I'm special too.
Pretty awesome over here.
Exactly.
My field need. And you
Exactly.
end up in this, like, debate you can't win.
Right.
And so had I had it to do over again, we would have had either some kind of a threshold or a max that we would have allowed for any customizations, and some sort of guardrails around it, because what we found is when we create new systems or new tooling, we can put those around and nobody minds at all. Like, oh, okay, this is the constraint of the system. I get that.
Sure.
I'm happy to work with that. That makes total sense to me. It's explained in documentation. I can understand it, and I know who to talk to if I have a specific thing I want to do against it.
Got it.
But doing it backwards, very difficult.
So what type of education or training did you put in place? And I'm kind of curious, where were you coming from? Before you were in VSTS, where were your work items? Where were your bugs?
You know, they were in a smattering of different systems across any particular team. So
Sure.
TFS, Product Studio.
Okay.
I'm sure we still had some RAID out there, like just
Yeah.
across all different systems.
Okay.
And so part of it was the big bet on VSTS.
Okay.
And at the time, VSTS couldn't do anything cross-account. So
Sure.
that was why we were all in one big project and in one big team.
Gotcha.
And the other reason, in fairness, is there is this desire in WDG to be able to see all the work and be able to reason on it together.
Yep.
And so one of the sets of tools we've built is a way to see top down what's all the work going on and how does it accrue to something meaningful. You know, we have this stories concept. It's the wrong use of the word stories for Agile, and so
But
I always see people twitch a bit. Oh, you used it wrong. You used it wrong. Do you not know that? But you know, we call them, because we mean them as stories we'll tell our customers. So that was how we picked the word.
Okay.
And that's the work that Terry and his LT review every 6 months. And they can
Gotcha.
use VSTS to do that because we have a view where we say, do you want to know how the story we have around our devices? Do you want to
Gotcha.
see how that work is all coming together and whether or not it's on track? Well, because we're all in the project together and we're all using common norms, we can show a view of that, which
Yeah.
does provide value.
Yeah, I remember when people would say, so I would go to a customer and they'd say, so how many team projects do we need?
Yeah.
My first question would be, how do you report status?
Yes.
Right, that's the number one way, because if you report status on a project or on this or on that, you want that to be the easiest thing. What are you asked for most often? The status on what?
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that reporting that and getting you that answer is the easiest possible answer for you. And sometimes it means putting it in one project, sometimes it means breaking it apart, but I always led with, how do you report status? And it sounds like you want to be able to see across your org.
Yep.
And it makes it really easy when they're all in the same place.
Yep.
It sounds like now I'm understanding why people cringe, because what you just described as a story sounds more like an epic.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So
Yeah.
so I did map that correctly.
Yep.
And then from your epic, you would have features and then stories broken down into. Okay.
Yeah,
got
we
it.
have different names for them because, of course, we do. But
Sure,
yeah.
sure. But I understand. At least now I've mapped it correctly to where it was supposed to be. So one other thing I wanted to ask there is, so again, we're just kind of talking about education. So they came from these smattering of different systems. Was there all right, we're going to go to everyone trained on VSTS before we move you over, or what? No. So that was
No.
something else that was
Yeah,
probably.
it's one of these where the desire to be part of the thing probably outpaced the readiness of the org to adopt said thing.
Gotcha.
Where like we just threw everybody in, and and at the same time, like we had to, mostly teams were used to tracking bugs.
Okay.
not used to tracking planning work,
Sure.
right? Like those are very different things.
Sure.
And so to throw everybody in and be like, now do it, and there's no like, and we, as at the time we were the operating systems group, OSG, this is how we work. This is the common definition for how we work. Like, so you got really creative tinkerers creating really creative solutions in all parts of the system.
Ouch. Yeah, I can imagine. Again, that's something I would think that going back and doing this over again, you would focus, because what I want people to get from the show is, all right, so Microsoft made some mistakes. What are the solutions? I don't want to just say, look, we messed up too and now we're better, but had you had a chance to go back and do this again, I would assume that you would go and educate everyone on, look, these are going to be the changes from what you do today, and let's not try to make this product exactly like your old product. That used to drive me nuts.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, so why did you customize it? Because we wanted it like our old system. Then why did you leave your old system?
Yeah.
I don't understand. You were leaving that system for a reason. Why did you bring all that baggage with you and just make this the other system?
Yeah.
And they was like, well, that's how we always do it. And it's just, you want to pull your hair out,
Yeah.
right? Because like this was an opportunity for you to really evaluate and determine, do I even need these customizations, right? Because you're going to go through so much effort to move them. For what? And I really tell people, this is a really good opportunity for you to just do some self-evaluation.
Yeah.
Do we need this? Learn how this other product works. Let's use it to the best of its ability. And if and only if it doesn't meet our needs, should we then customize it? Not, literally, they haven't even created a single work item yet.
Yeah.
And they're customizing it to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you went through the same classic trap as everyone
Yeah.
else. And what's interesting is with VSTS, it's even harder to get there, but you had to really try hard to screw up.
Oh yeah. We got this. We got lessons learned and how to do it if you've got folks who want to.
Oh my goodness. So
My favorite, it's a lesson I took from it that I would also say to people embarking on this is be wary of the New Year's resolutions. Because what we found was the hardest thing to change, and is still the hardest thing to change, is, hey, here's these fields. Nobody's using them. But I'm gonna.
There you go.
No,
Yeah.
it's been here for 2 years. Like, I know you're not using them. It's going to be critical to my workflow because I'm going to be the kind of person who's going to do that kind of stuff because I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to be buff. You don't understand. It's going to be CrossFit. It's going to be amazing. So don't judge my New Year's resolution. I'm totally going to be that person.
Interesting.
And you get into these really crazy making debates.
Interesting.
Because you can't fight someone's optimism about their future self. And so I would say the one thing I would encourage folks to be is be really careful of that, because even now we've done loads of work to make it one of the fastest systems in the world, clearly the biggest in the world, with tools we've added that we're actually really proud of and we think help the business. We still have places where we fight all the time against the kind of person people are going to be. We're like, no, I'm going to be the kind of person that not only maps my capacity, but then goes back and does a retrospective every single iteration to figure out how I spent it, and then I'm going to adjust forward. It's like, but I can prove you're not that person.
Yeah.
But you don't know me or my soul, and totally I'm going to be that person. And it's why I call it the New Year's resolution, where it's like, I can't fight your optimism for your future perfect self. And so we found the only way, and this was in effect against personal optimism, to get most of the folks to the right place was to just show data about usage. And I would say for someone who's adopting it, like, it's like a dog whistle, you got to be listening for it. Because people will tell you, like, no, I am going to curate 4 state machines.
Wow.
I'm going to.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
because I did this for so long. That's something I never faced. That's fascinating. I can understand and how difficult it would be to counteract that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't say you're never going to do this.
Yeah.
But I can prove that you've never done it.
Yes.
And how about we take it out now and I'll put it back when you're ready? That's
Yes.
probably the conversation I probably would have had with them. It's easy to put back. Let's just take it out of your way now. And
Well, and it's this thing where folks have this sense of what their requirements are that aren't based in the real world.
Sure.
And so I would say to especially big companies, like, be wary of that, because we ran into that. We still run into that after this 2-year campaign we've been on to like clean it back and get it back to a more neutral version of its true self. And we still face but you just don't understand.
Wow.
Like, we have a big debate we have internally is, how many fields do you need that indicate who are the collection of people that work on an item?
Right.
Okay, so you're a pure master at this. The answer is 1.
Yes. I mean, that's why there's only 1 on the field.
Yeah, there's 1. And the answer in our org is 6.
Wow.
And the data shows unequivocally that there are certain pockets where there is like a team that curates one of those fields with precision and detail and love and care. But that's a small, there are, you do find these errants in the data. But if you look at the mass of the data, nobody uses those fields.
Right.
I can't remove them.
Wow.
I go back and I'm like, nobody's using those. Jill.
Just wait,
Jill,
you'll see.
sweetie, like, I need you to understand. I'm gonna be those people.
Wow.
And it's like, but I can prove there's 30 of them. They're super diligent.
Right.
I appreciate their love for the field, but I can prove they're using it. So those
Yeah.
30 people should probably keep that field.
Sure.
But everybody else, they open up the work item, and every single day on that tab, they see 6 fields that they're never gonna touch.
Yeah, it's just more confusing and everything else. And I would force them like, well, then you need to break those tasks down again.
Yeah.
Right? If 6 people are going to touch it,
Yeah.
why don't you break it down into 6 smaller tasks that only need 1 person to do them?
Yeah, and
right? They're not thinking about it in that granular way.
Because it's the optimism.
Yeah.
Because it's no. I am going to. I don't now. But I'm going to be the kind of person that fills it in for myself, queries on it every day, checks my items, and keeps tabs on them.
Wow.
And you're like, but you're not.
Yeah,
but
you
you're
don't have
not.
much time, right? I mean, come
You're
on.
not going to go to the gym. Like, it's okay. We can talk about this for real. Like, you're not. You don't have time. You're busy.
Wow.
So I would say that was for us at least one to this day is one that I still have
Struggle
pockets
with.
of resistance on.
Right, and it always boils down, whenever I define DevOps for customers, I always bring it down into 3 pillars, which is the people, the process, and the products.
Yeah.
And that's a people problem.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yeah.
Right, and it's just, the longer they've been doing it the way that they've been doing it, the harder it is to convince them that they don't need to do it that way.
Yeah.
And what's interesting in the scenario that you just gave, they haven't even been doing it
Yeah.
that way. This is how they've been envisioning doing it for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Still haven't done it to this day,
Yeah.
but know one day they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's so painful. And it's just, it's frustrating at times. But what I found, the only way I'm ever successful is when I hire someone in to say it to them, because I've been saying it to
Yeah.
them for a year, they don't believe me.
Yeah.
But when an external consultant comes in and says the exact same words, for some reason they hear it for the first time.
Yeah.
So I always joke and say, hire the asshole. Right? Hire the person who's going to come in and say no to people who aren't accustomed to being said no to. And for some reason, because they're hired in, they feel that they have this obligation to listen to the highly paid consultant.
Yeah.
Literally say the exact same words that you're telling them. So if that is the only way you can get it to work, you got to get that form usable again,
Yeah.
right? The more you put on it, the more people are going to abuse it and misuse it, leave stuff blank, and you can't make them all mandatory because 90% of the people don't use them, but the one
Yep.
person who wants them needs them to be mandatory,
Yep.
right? And then it completely breaks down the whole system again, which is painful. So obviously we need to going back in time, do more training and education up front, not only of the people and what they're going to transfer from, but how to use the system itself before you go let them make customizations.
Well, and how do you work?
Yeah.
Like, what are the things that we're all going to agree we're all going to do?
Right.
And
right.
and to your point of like, if you fix the people problem by clearly defining and educating on the process, then the tools are super
They're
easy.
easy. They are the easiest part. And that's
Yeah.
what I tell everybody. It's the people. I think the process might even be easier than the products because we know how to do this.
Yeah.
Right? There's books and books and books on how to do Agile well, how to do Scrum specifically very well. We know how to do that. Right? The products are just there to make that easier. But if those people don't get it, there's no products and process in the world that's going to work for you.
Yeah.
And when you're moving a ship of 30,000 people,
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you've made as far as you have in 2 years, right? Because
Yeah.
I would think that you'd been on much longer. Did you have a lot of buy-in from the top?
We did. You know,
Okay.
one of the things that helped us was there is this, we have all of these individuals who need to get work done with the system.
Sure.
And it's that same concept of when there's concentrated benefits and diffuse cost.
Okay.
Those are the hardest problems to solve
Sure.
because everybody here can bear 90 fields. You know, our Bugwit had 181 fields. Like that, though they can all bear that. It's like a grain of sand in their shoe every single day. But there's a set of folks for whom it is critical that those fields. I know that sounds silly when I would say like one of the toughest things for me to explain to people when they're like, what do you do, Jill? And I'm like, I fight with people about fields on a form every single day. I feel you're judging and I don't need it. Like it's this really interesting problem of like, you've got folks who every single day pay the cost of that. But you do have folks who lobbyists who have like a real concentrated benefit from it. And it's really hard to solve the diffuse problem because no one person is super angry about it. Just everybody is a little bit slowed down by it. So we were lucky that from the tippy top, people were like, I'm hearing dissatisfaction with this.
Okay.
And it's nothing specific, it's just sort of the general, like, it's not working for us. So go figure out what's not working and why. And that gave us a lot of permission to drive for tools improvements, process improvements, and then help with I was going to say people improvements, that's too harsh.
But like, I know what you mean, yeah. It's getting that, and I always tell people what we try to do, or I try to do being on dev before I moved to the Azure side was, I want to produce the best products in the world.
Yeah.
Because I think that's going to make it easier to convince the people to use them, right? If the tools are painful and hard to use, they're going to resist it even more.
Yeah.
So if I can produce the world's best products, they're just going to be curious.
Yeah.
They're going to want to use it. And it sounds like that's what happened to you. Everyone wanted to be on there,
yeah.
but they wanted it to be like their old system as well. Right?
They wanted the security blanket.
Yeah, they all wanted one ES, right? One engineering system from Microsoft. We get it. We're excited. So that was the draw for them, right? But they were just too resistant to let go of the old way of doing things.
Well, and when there is no bigger yes, it's hard to say no to what you know.
For sure.
I feel like part of it for us is like, even in the way we work, Agile's not going to work for everybody. That's okay. We just have an obligation to paint the bigger yes, which is, I do love Aaron Bjork's aligned autonomy. Like, if you can align on the things that provide interstate commerce, we all benefit.
Sure.
And I don't need Georgia to look exactly like Maine.
Right.
Like, I just don't.
Exactly.
But I do need to be able to drive from Maine to Georgia, and I need to be able to pay for things in the same way. And so we really benefited from top-down support for that. And once we started to be able to provide the bigger yes, we got a lot more excitement about, oh, wait, now I see how this can benefit me.
And I've noticed that a lot when people always ask me, so Donovan, where do you see the most success taking an organization and moving them through this digital transformation? It's like when I get buy-in from the top.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if they don't get it, then they're going to resist all the Agile transformation, and because they're going to want Gantt charts and milestones. They're going to want things that simply don't match the way that we work anymore. And getting that groundswell just isn't enough, because they're going to impede your progress by asking you to produce and translate like what you do into the words that they understand. If they don't communicate with you in the same language, they're going to be the impedance mismatch there. So I always have best success when I can get the C-level execs to say, I just went to a conference, Agile is awesome, why aren't we doing this? Let's go do this. Because then I can apply pressure all the way down. But applying pressure the other way, because the devs aren't going to say no to their bosses. When their boss asks for a Gantt chart, they're not going to say Gantt charts are stupid, they don't make sense in Agile. They're going to go figure out how to map their burn down to a Gantt chart, right? And it's just going to be this horrible waste of time. And luckily, and I think the reason that we're so fortunate is because we are a software company. Right, so we're a software-minded individuals first, and we understand that Agile is right. So I think getting that buy-in from the top for us was easy. When I go to a company who's manufacturing first, or an automobile company first, and then we try to tell them DevOps best practices or Agile practices, that really just does not line up, and we have a lot of struggle. So it's good to hear that we at least had the buy-in from the top. We had the excitement. We just had to get people to let go of their older ways of doing things. So what other lessons did you learn, or would you share with people who are making a transformation from, and yours is really unique, the fact that you're not all Agile. Right? So and I'm also curious, how do you align and how do you plan a Waterfall project alongside an Agile project that have interdependencies with each other?
The biggest ways we have, we all use a common taxonomy for iteration. So that's all common. And so there are teams that go smaller. There are teams that, we all use the same iteration language. There are teams that also use like the weekly language or the daily language, but it all accrues up to the same monthly language or on monthly iterations. And when we can do that, we can align schedules, which means that if you are, and then we plan by releases, which is every 6 months, some big release comes out from WDG. And so when we can align against those two timelines, then everything that everybody's doing in between can just hit those marks and have the right conversations to align folks. So dependencies are the most interesting. Like, we have in our system, before we archived the system, we had 11 million work items. And of those, there actually are about 2,000 a release that everybody cares about. That's why I keep harping on dependencies. Like, there's a whole bunch of flotsam in the system that can kind of do its own thing. There's a whole bunch of high-level stuff in the system that can kind of do its own thing. It's there mostly to provide structure for things to nest in.
Okay.
But then there's the workers, right? Like the worker wits that are just where all of the information and the trade and the conversation is happening. And the truth is you don't care about all of those either.
Oh,
you
okay.
care about, certainly at the top-down level, at the middles-in level, at the bottoms-up level, there are this set of about 2,000 release that someone's going to come yell at you about. Those are dependencies. Those are like, please don't hose the devices. Please don't hose store. Please don't hose Sigma.
Sure.
Please make sure they can do their job by you doing your job.
Gotcha.
And so we put more tooling, more customization, more process, more focus on that, because everything else can kind of adjust around it.
Okay.
And so that's where we have people involved who care deeply about that and make sure it stays on the rails. We have processes that are unique to dependencies to make sure that they traverse through the system well and healthy. And we have tooling to support it.
Now, you mentioned that several times. So there sounds like there's been a lot of custom tooling outside of VSTS that you've invested in as well.
Yeah, as extensions in VSTS, yeah.
I see. Okay, so great. So you're just using the normal extension methods to go and add, what is it? Are these widgets? Are they dashboards? What are you adding?
All of the above.
Okay.
We've added 3 custom dashboards, one of
Okay.
which is our tracker for dependencies. And
Okay.
it has all kinds of, the thing I get so excited about is when I show it to, because you said, you talk to manufacturing companies, I'm like, I can't picture it. And it's like, let me help you picture it. Like, we figured out a way to do it so you can see across a massive timeline how are things coming together
Okay.
without someone having to do extra work to make that show up.
Gotcha.
Because I can read your state, I can read your iteration, I can read your assigned to, I can read your title, and I can put it out on a
Sure.
chart for you to figure out. So you, as the person doing the work, don't have to do a lot more.
Right.
But you, as the person who cares about is the project on schedule, can see what you need to see. So we really benefited from the extensibility model that VSTS has, because that for us allowed us to add a custom link that would be the way we designated dependency, allowed us to add custom dashboard for it. We added custom widgets, but not so much around dependencies. And that allows us to have the easier experience, like just use the form, just use the template. But if you can assert it with this one special thing, tell us it's a dependency, all this other value lights up, and then everything falls into place.
Nice.
And it was, it's interesting because once we did that, then we discovered the next set of processes we needed, right? Which is once you do that, then people need a common nomenclature for how do I know what's important? Great. That's something we can all create and define and write down. And then once you use it, that's not an extra field.
Right.
There's already a field for that.
Yep, exactly.
And you get these benefits from that.
And I like the way that you just described that, because I'm the first to say, focus on what hurts most first.
Yes.
And don't try to sit down and dream up what the entire end solution is going to be, because you'll never get started. Because you're always thinking about one more thing you need to add, and you're just going to be simply designing for the rest of your life. But just focus on what hurts most. And it sounded like it was dependencies for you. And you went and you found a way to solve dependencies, and all of a sudden something else lit up as saying, now that you fixed that, this hurts the most. This is the bottleneck. How do we then fix this? And then you were able to go and extend VSTS even further to say, now that we're going to take care of that for you too. Now what's next, right? And I love the just piece by piece. And before you know it, you're going to look up and have this amazing system that's able to focus on what you want. I have too many people who want to stop what they're doing and plan out their entire DevOps transformation before they ever start going down the road. And it's nice to see that you were like, nope, dependencies hurt, we're going to figure this out, and then we're going to go and iterate over that as well.
Yeah, that one's been nice because it's also fun to watch a solution grow more valuable and enable more folks. And so once we defined our rules of the road, then we could create the dependency management system. That sounded bigger than what it is. It's a link in the dashboard, but
Still.
sounded fancy. So once you define that, now we have this beautiful place we're in where we are starting to do it cross-account. Because why do we care about cross-account? Well, it turns out Office depends on us exactly as much as the teams within WDG do.
Right.
And the fun thing for us is then we get this opportunity to give back and be like, look, we're going to solve the cross-account problem or the cross-account linking opportunity this way. Who else can benefit from this? And one of the things we've been kind of excited about with VSTS is getting these extensions available to, because I love the story you said. I did hey, WDG uses VSTS talk once, and one of the sales folks came up and said, I have a customer with 1,000 people. And they want to use it, and I'm like, I'm going to laugh in your face. That's going to be rude. I'm going to pull it in. That is not polite. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we have 33,000.
Exactly.
I think you could scale. And, it was this moment for me of like, we want, part of the reason we're even doing this is
Sure.
like we want to give back. Like we have seen the ability to do things we didn't know we could do.
Awesome.
And to your point, like we had to get focused, and we still have tons to do. And I'm going to have engineers on the WDG team who watch this and go, I'm going to write her a letter. I got a sternly worded letter.
I think she's talking about me.
Because she's saying that this is fixed, and
Gotcha.
and that's okay. Like
Right.
We're never going to make
still
the
working on
perfect
it.
system.
Exactly. Even for the VSTS team, we've been 7 years into our transformation. We're never going to be done.
Yeah.
You're always going to find ways to be more efficient. You're always going to find ways that you can actually go faster. And no matter what you fix, something else will then become the bottleneck. It might even be something you fixed already.
Yeah.
Right. That is now slower because you are so much faster everywhere else.
Yes.
And you can go and reiterate on that. Just because it's not broken doesn't mean you shouldn't improve it.
Yes.
And that's what you're going to do with your DevOps pipeline forever. So it's interesting because we first talked about you being 3 projects and 1 account because you couldn't do cross-account linking. But now that you can, is there any plans to break it apart further, or are you like, nope, we're firing on all cylinders, we like it, we're accustomed to this now, and as normal, we don't want to change because it's working?
Yeah.
Or are you thinking about going and changing the way that you're doing that?
I don't know. That's actually on my plate for the next 6 months to figure
go
out.
figure that out?
Yeah, and it's a genuine answer. Like part of the reason I don't know is a lesson I did learn that we've talked about already is change is bad unless it's great.
Yeah.
And this is a good example of one where it is not trivial at our scale
Sure.
to run one of these systems.
Sure.
It's not expensive, but it's not trivial.
Right.
And to figure out if that's worth it for the org to have many of them, it's an interesting question that we're going to noodle on for the next
And if it
6
doesn't
months.
fix something, if there's nothing screaming out that, man, this hurts because we're close to each other, there's no reason to break it out.
Yeah.
But if there's something that says, this would be better if, but if that doesn't exist, there's no reason to go break what's not broken. I mean, you can improve what's not broken, but you don't want to break something that is working really, really well, too, by thinking you're going to go further than you're not.
It is a point of personal pride that when I took this job, the only thing folks wanted me to do was to break the account apart.
Wow.
And so it is like a personal moment of pride, which I shouldn't say that, but like that's not actually the way people want us to solve this anymore.
Sure.
And so to your point, like now that we've opened up that opportunity, it's interesting to me that it's not the number one thing we think we need to go fix because we're so busy iterating on like even less fields, even more widgets, even more dashboards to create value for all of these
It's
taxpaying
not the thing
citizens.
that hurts the most right
Yeah.
now. It's not the thing. We need to go focus on that. So that's really interesting. So what else, like any closing thoughts, anything that you would want to say to someone who's you 2 years ago? If you could go back to you 2 years ago and say, this is what you need to know to make this less painful, more efficient, what would you tell yourself 2 years ago?
I would have told myself, have a plan.
Educate.
Start somewhere.
Exactly.
Have a plan. Have the buy-off.
Yeah.
Top-down buy-off. Don't allow what you don't want in the system.
That's
Like if you don't
huge.
want it in the system, don't allow it. And dream big on what you can do if you get folks aligned. Because
Gotcha.
I also think we were so busy fixing that I actually think that now we're in this space where we just keep dreaming bigger on how we can make it even easier, even better, even more vanilla in some ways and customized
Sure.
in others.
Sure.
And so I wish someone had told me like, no, dream big, like go for the big dream on this. Because we were stuck in a lot of incrementalism for a long time. And then when we kind of snapped out of that, got the top-down alignment and got a plan, we were able to do really big things with VSTS.
Awesome.
And have faith that Agile works for a reason.
It does. Oh my gosh. I mean, that's another one that's just, I go into companies and like, well, we tried Agile, but it doesn't work. I'm like, really? It doesn't work? So tell me about your Agile process. Tell me about your daily standards. Well, we got rid of those. Why is that? Because they were taking an hour long. Like, interesting. So tell me about your retrospectives. Well, we didn't have those all the time. Really? No, okay. And your sprint reviews? Well, we only had them when we had something to show. So let me stop you there. You were never Agile, right? You were never Agile, not even for 1 second, yet you're sitting here telling me that it fails. I think it was Ken Swaber said, Scrum is like chess. Right, it can't fail.
Yeah.
Some play it well, some don't.
Yeah.
But it cannot fail.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the way that I view it as well. It's just a series of of rituals that you go through that all have value. And if you sacrifice the ritual, you sacrifice the value. And if you're willing to sacrifice it, you don't understand why you were supposed to be doing that, right?
Yeah.
And you just don't get it. And I'm a fierce defender of Agile and Scrum. Like, no, I've been successful too often for you to be able to tell me that it doesn't work. It will work if you believe. But I'm also the first to say that Waterfall can work for you too.
Yeah.
It all depends on what your goal is. If your goal is stationary, it will work. And it sounds like again, you have a very unique challenge having to mix those two methodologies
And multiple
together.
methodologies.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable that you're pulling that off. We might actually have to have another, cause I think I want to peel that onion back, but I don't want this show to be like 4 hours long because I still think there's some really interesting things that you could probably share with companies who are in that exact same position where and you can hear the frustration in their voice when they come to me and they are so agile and they are just so frustrated by this waterfall dependency that they have.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the Windows team has figured that out to some extent.
Yeah.
And again, it's that, yes, they're waterfall, but we all agree that every month we're going to come up and align and make sure that we're running at the same cadence. But it's agile teams and waterfall teams coming together. So if time permits, I'm going to have you back and I want to peel that onion back a little bit further because I know a lot of customers struggle with that, especially in industries that aren't software.
Yeah.
So
And we had to align, we had to invent over time a bunch of different processes that allow multiple modes of working to work all together.
I bet.
You know, and it's funny because once you do it, it seems so obvious that you needed those things.
Right.
But boy, it took us release over release over release over release to realize what those, for us, what those key things were. And now we do have teams that are pure Agile. We have teams that aren't at all.
Right.
We have teams that are, I think Agile falls a bad word, so I shouldn't say it, but are somewhere in between. We have teams that are running pure, not running pure, running some concocted thing that only they use, that they use uniquely.
But
I have the luxury of not caring,
Right.
as long as we all operate with the same rules of the road.
Exactly.
And there's something also freeing about that, and where, you know, when I hear folks like, oh, getting 1,000 people to work together, it's like, you don't actually need them to.
Right.
You need them to agree on a language.
Right.
And like once you do that, like you kind of can navigate the rest by deciding what really matters.
And sometimes I think you just need to treat adults like adults too, right? And stop treating them like children.
Yeah.
And sometimes people have such low expectations of these highly paid individuals. I'm like, they're adults. Tell them what to do. Tell them the rules. Let's get this going, and stop coddling them and treating them like children because they're going to act like children, right? It's just sometimes it's ridiculous, some of the things that I have to hear. I'm like, they're adults, right? Right? These are adults that we're talking about. I cannot believe I'm having this discussion with you right now. Yeah. You drove yourself here? Like, who helped you get dressed that we're having this conversation? Right? It just boggles my mind sometimes, but it's like, wow, just treat them like adults.
Yeah.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for
having
doing this.
you here, and I hopefully that you will come back and we will have some more discussions on. Again, my mind is noodling over this whole Agile waterfall combination thing. I think it can make for a fantastic show, but I've really enjoyed your time here.
Thank you for having me. I really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good morning, everyone. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Perfect.